How's it going, everyone? It is the return of previously discussions with the commander, but I did notice Robin posts it conversations with the commander, and it does sound a little bit better. That's why he's still the master and I'm still the student. Um, but yes, I am live with my best friend Robin, who is what we're going on
Oh God.
not 8 years knowing
About
each other now.
8 years. Yeah, it's crazy. We're in the threshold of 10 years of knowing each other.
Yeah,
Which once you
you,
get to
you haven't
Sean
gotten
and
rid
I,
of me yet.
like 20 years, Sean and I have known each other for 20 years.
Yeah,
We're like, okay, at this point, it's like whatever. But
yeah,
10 years, it's crazy to
yeah.
think. Almost there.
But it's good to get the podcast started again. I love just having a sit down, talking to friends. I had two last year with Hux Cafe and KB Loves Movies.
Yeah.
Such fun conversations, and honestly, I haven't really done a sit down with you, Robin. Like
Hmm.
before, it was you like interviewing me. Now it's me interviewing you.
Look at that. How the turns have tabled.
Just give a little background on like where you came up with Brick City Blockade and how you met Sean and everything like that.
Yeah, so I guess first off, it starts with meeting Sean. So Sean had moved from, I believe, Wisconsin to New Hampshire for his dad's work back in the 5th grade in Exeter, New Hampshire. And I didn't get to know Sean until 6th grade. We hung out, we had a lot of mutual friends. We went to birthday parties where we ran around pretending to be Sonic the Hedgehog, like the true nerds that we were.
Well, which one was Sonic? Which one was Tails?
I believe that I was Tails and Sean was Sonic. And we used to go play Star Fox all the time and whatever else. And it wasn't really until middle school when we were like grouped together in like the same classes that we really got to know each other. We spent a lot of time with each other, hanging out outside of school, playing sports, playing video games, everything else. And then, of course, through high school, we were the best of friends. You couldn't separate us. Even our graduation pictures is of Sean and I graduating. There was a period of time for about 2 years where Sean and I lost connection. We kind of like, as you do after high school, as you do in life, you go off and you do your own thing. Well, Sean and I run into each other at Great Bay Community College. We're both, end up being there. And we get talking again. And of course, this is right around, we graduated in 2012. We're finishing up our last years at Great Bay, so it's probably about 2015 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, what happened in 2012 was the acquisition.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was huge, right? So Sean and I were like, oh my God, how exciting. I really didn't get to know Sean as a Star Wars fan until that happened and we started talking about it. So years later, yeah, go ahead.
When you met Sean, it was after the whole prequel trilogy. That was all done by the time you met Sean. So, okay.
Yeah. So we just kind of like, once we got back together in community college, hanging out, catching up and everything else, 2015 hits and we're right at that point of The Force Awakens. And so I have already done Facebook Lives up to this point. I have already, come up with the idea of doing a Star Wars podcast because I was so excited. I was like, oh my goodness, this thing that I loved as a child for so long is coming back. I never thought about having a co-host. I thought maybe I'll just do my own thing. That was until I saw Sean and started saying, hey, you know what? I've known this guy for quite some time. I know he likes Star Wars. So I asked him. And at first I thought Sean was going to be like, nah, I'm really busy. Like, I don't have the time to do that.
No, fuck off.
And he looked right at me. Not even no hesitation whatsoever. He was like, yeah, sure. Let's do this. So we go down to the horrible basement that I had in the apartment to record the first episode of what we called the Blockade podcast. It was just the Blockade podcast.
Oh, so not even Brick City yet.
It wasn't even Brick City yet. And it wasn't until I did the research to find out that Exeter, New Hampshire was called the Brick City back in the 1800s, just to kind of tie in some local history into it, because I didn't expect the podcast to go beyond New Hampshire. I thought, okay, we're just going to stay local, do this little thing. No, we became very mistaken with a Lego podcast. And people wanted to know where the story was. So that's really where the Brick City Blockade came from. And it's existed since 2016. And it's amazing to think that in just a couple of years, we're going to be at 10 years.
I honestly just realized that.
Yeah. 2026 will be 10 years of this podcast.
That is honestly, that's amazing that the podcast has been going just as strong as it has been since you guys started.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years later. And of course, breaks here and there. Every podcast needs to take a break.
Of course.
Because you get burnout, you just don't feel motivated, or there's just nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, like how it all started. And do you feel like the podcast made yours and Sean's like friendship even closer?
Yeah, I mean, what it started happening again was not only was it conversations about, hey, let's sit down and let's get an episode cranked out this week. It was like, okay, let's get an episode cranked out. Let's go hit up the bar. Let's go shoot some hoops. Let's go see a movie. Let's go, it rekindled that 12 to 13 years of a friendship that had existed for so long that had gone silent and had come back. So if there's anything that it did, it kind of brought Sean and I back together. It made us realize that, yeah, you know what? Our friendship has always been there. But, one of the best things about a friendship is too, that, is as far as it may drift away from you, it's not that hard to bring it back. So the podcast was kind of that dangled fish on the end of a fish of a line that was thrown out there to say, hey, rekindle that friendship, bring it back. So it's really cool.
And just real quick, we have Tiana in the chat. How's it going, Tiana? We also got Laren, who is a frequent guest on the watch along streams and stuff like that.
Hey, Laren, good to see you.
Or as Dave would call him, Lauren, before actually meeting.
Come on, Dave. Jeez.
But yeah, I remember being a fan of the podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was getting close to The Last Jedi's release and stuff like that. I had started listening to you guys like a little bit after, I think, Rogue One and stuff like that. I would pop in the chat. I wouldn't really talk because I'm like, I don't want to talk to these guys. I just want to listen. And when it started getting closer to The Last Jedi, you were doing all these Facebook live streams. That's how a lot of this stuff started, was Facebook Live.
That's right.
Rest in peace.
No, seriously. It's not the same. You try to do it, it's not the same.
Yeah. And I remember, honestly, I don't care. You can come after me. I remember you doing your live streams with a certain Caden.
Yes, correct.
And you were doing like a trivia thing. And I remember you screwing up on Lord Scourge.
I still can't believe I screwed that one up.
I mean, Lord Scourge is kind of a pussy anyway, but
okay. Yeah, no, that's fair.
But I just remember that, and like it was really after that stream that you and I started talking. And stuff like that. We were talking more about Last Jedi coming up and everything. And then we did your live podcast, which was Make the Jump.
That's right.
Where we had technical difficulties in part 1 and part 2.
Per usual.
But, I just remember like we clicked like that.
Oh, it was instant.
Like, I've never had anyone I really clicked with like that besides like Renee or some like the Steelbook crew, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And I just want, I don't think I've ever asked you, like, what was your thought process on when I like started to come on and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I think one of the things, and again, I love bringing this up too, and it's a really great story. And I don't know if you'd want me to tell the story here, but I think
Oh, we can share everything.
it,
I don't
it
care.
adds it adds some value to it. We had James Brown is a dear friend. Did fantastic voice, number one.
Mhm.
Has done some voice acting work in his time. I know James and I talk every once in a while. We're trying to find times to hang out, whatever else. And of course, per usual, when you start as a podcast network, sometimes things start drifting away. You move in a different direction, and people move in different directions. But James was a great story. And I'm going to relay this back to how I met you and everything and how we connected. I met James through a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Wow.
Because when I pulled up to get my coffee every morning, he would do a different voice and had this low timbre way of asking you what kind of coffee you want. And it caught my attention, and I was like, hold on a second. This guy could easily not just be a part of the podcast, but he's got some voiceover talent. He could do the intro to our podcast. So one afternoon I walked in and he was there, and he saw my Star Wars pins on my jacket. He was like, "Hey, I like those pins." And I was like, "Hey, thanks. You like Star Wars?" And he goes, "Bud, let me tell you something. I love Star Wars." And I was like, "Okay." So we set up a time. There's a picture of him and I on social media welcoming him to the podcast to do the voiceover work and whatever else. For you, Andrew, it was very similar. I had you on Make the Jump. I saw all the things that you were posting on Facebook and whatever else. You were really passionate about different parts of the fandom. And the one thing I always loved about you, and still loved about you to this day, is you don't stick to one thing. Your fandom moves and changes with your interests in general. So, like, whether that can be music 1 month, you can move back to Star Wars, into Marvel, into whatever else. It varies. And what makes a good podcaster, and what makes somebody not only that, but a nerd's best friend, is somebody who just doesn't stick to one thing, and their fandom expands beyond just one franchise. And when we first had our talk on Make the Jump, which I still apologize that the audio, I'm going to apologize to you until I'm 6 feet, 12 feet underground here about that. But, we just clicked. And what it was it was our passion for the fandom. It was our passion for the things that, we associate ourselves with within Star Wars and Marvel and everything else. And your passion was so well spoken. For somebody who had no podcasting experience up to that point, you came on camera and were able to say everything about your passions without any pause or without any stutter or without any, second thought. And that really hit with me. And I was like, hold on a second. Not only is this guy local, he's a local nerd, but your fandom was so outspoken, and we needed somebody at that time on the podcast that could be that voice of, hey, you know what? We're talking about Star Wars this week, but I think that this topic would be really good, or that this topic would be really good. Or let me offer you this other thought about this topic. And you just did it so flawlessly, and our friendship grew from that. And I think something that people don't think about, I know this is a long-winded way of saying this all, but I think something that people don't think about is that when you make friendships, it's not just who the person is, it's who the person stands for, what they stand for. And you stand for everything that's good about the fandom, and everything that's good about life, and everything that's good about, finding that togetherness in the stuff that we love. So I want to applaud you for that, and your growth over the years, from the podcast into your own work. I mean, I got to give you a round of applause for that.
Well, thank you for that, Robin. We also have Tony in the chat.
There's Tony. I was wondering where he's going to be.
We also have T. Bruce, Michael Myers. So we got Michael Myers watching. I don't know how I feel about Michael Myers watching.
Yeah.
We also have Gus in the chat.
Hey, Gus.
All right.
I've never heard that. Tony, can you explain to us maybe what Tony Meatloaf is? Is this a thing? Like, I don't know.
It's a thing.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Usually it's Meatloaf Tony, but Gus decided to do the reverse.
Is this like the guy that plays for the New York Giants, Tommy Cutlets? Is this Tony Meatloaf?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I remember we started as Knights of the Order Star Wars discussion.
Yes, that's
that
right.
was before I joined Brick City Blockade, and we did what 3-4 episodes before you guys you fully brought me on.
Yeah,
and then we changed it to Words of the Wills, and we did an episode every week for I think what 2 years.
For 2 years, it was
2 years. Every week straight, like
incredible.
like we had, like you had to, obviously a lot of you were there towards the hype of Last Jedi, Solo, and Rise of Skywalker. If you weren't there at the hype for that, there was so much stuff to talk about. Not only that, we had Star Wars Rebels as well.
Yeah.
And I remember we did one of the Worst of the Wills, and I said, because it was like right as Rebels ended, and there was like whispers of like the 10th anniversary for Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I guarantee you they're bringing Clone Wars back.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. There's times when I'm talking on Words of the Wills, and I'm like, Rey's a Palpatine.
Right.
Clone Wars is coming back. Like, I should have put money on the Rey Palpatine thing.
That was huge. You were the only one at the time on the podcast network that thought about that. And to be honest with you, there were some that laughed at you because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, y'all, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I thought maybe she was a Skywalker. Like, I was like, okay, maybe she's that. But obviously we come to learn that they're interconnected.
J.J. Abrams was listening to that podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's like, that's a great idea.
Bob Iger was also listening on the other end, was like, I'm going to sue them.
Yeah. Well,
a whole other.
Well, Iger might want to focus on more quality movies. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Yes.
So Tony has the explanation for it.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Even that is a waiter took orders. Dave randomly turned to me and said, "Hey, Tony, about the meatloaf." It just what a great story. You know, I think Tony Meatloaf. I don't know. I feel like that's got to be on the back of Steelbook crew, like sweatshirts. Tony Meatloaf.
Yeah, we definitely need a merch line or something.
Yeah.
Meatloaf Tony. I don't have a nickname.
What about Dave? He's into the Macaulay Culkin wearing that mask all the time now.
It's either that or the Michael Jackson one.
Oh, yeah. No, the Michael Jackson one.
That mask is terrifying.
He wore that one thin, yeah.
He wore that at Silver Scream Con, and we were sharing a hotel room, and
oh no,
it's very unsettling.
Oh no.
Laren asks, thoughts on the movie Atomic Blonde? I'm about to give it a first watch. I've honestly never seen Atomic Blonde, but let me know what you think of it, Laren. I value your opinion.
Look at that. Look at this growth. Look at this measurement of quality. I love it.
But yeah, like that 2-year period, like I would travel up to your old, basically home, your condo up in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And we did a live Words of the Wills there. Technically, I should have done one at Celebration Lancaster, but that's a different story.
Yes.
But just not only just being a fan of the Brick City Blockade podcast, but being able to not only watch it grow as I kind of like took a step back a little bit,
yeah,
but being a part of the growth it makes me so happy to see where the podcast is now. Especially with you guys having the panel at Fan Expo Bus. That is huge.
It was great. Yeah.
And I am so happy for you guys. I can't even begin to like imagine what was going through your head
Ooh.
when you got the okay for the panel for Fan Expo Boston. I want you to walk me through like your first reaction getting the notification for that, and like Shaylin's reaction and Sean's and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, we had been trying for years. You know, we do the local conventions. We do Granite State Comic Con. We do the ones where you know, you're able to fill out a panel form, and it's
Mhm.
usually they get back to you within a week about, hey, you know, you got a slot, show up at 2 o'clock and you know, bring your equipment and do your live podcast, and we'll make sure people go to it. Fan Expo Boston is a whole other thing.
Mhm.
In terms of, it wasn't even just a panel; we got media accreditation too. Which getting the media accreditation is a process unto its own. They have to check all of your social media. They have to check and make sure that your content is appropriate. And the third
So that's why you're like, no, don't come to the panel.
exactly right, exactly. Um, but you know, I submitted it nice and early. I think I originally had sent an email to the
Mhm.
marketing group for Fan Expo Boston. I said, hey, you know, we're going to be trying to do a tour of Comic Con's upcoming from 2023 to 2024. You know, this uniting the fandom and bringing that to conventions, because Star Wars right now is just and the fandom itself is so jostled, that we need to have a panel that just focuses on the good stuff and focuses on the unity within the fandom. And I got a great response back of, you know, hey, we're going to take a look at all your information. We're going to let you know. It was less than a week after that,
Wow.
that I didn't even get an email directly from Fan Expo Boston. I
Mhm.
got it from the agency that runs the entire convention and runs all the fan expos
Oh
across
wow,
the country and the world.
that's
Um,
amazing.
their marketing director reached out to me and said, hey, we would love to have you this year. It's coming off the pandemic. We don't know how many people are going to be coming out to this thing.
Mhm.
You know, we have some Star Wars guests, but with the SAG after strikes and everything, we don't know content wise what
Mhm.
we're going to be able to provide to fans that are there. And shout out to the HoloNet Martyrs as well. They're another Star Wars podcast based in Massachusetts,
Mhm.
that also came after us the next day and also was on stage.
That's
Um,
awesome.
it was great that there were a bunch of Star Wars podcasts there, that were doing things. But for us, it was that reality of getting that email. And I remember receiving it saying, how many media passes do you want? That was the first one I got. And I was like, holy shit. We got media passes for Fan Expo Boston, which means getting to go to the panels, talking to folks,
Mhm.
um, having that kind of accreditation to actually talk to celebrities, at the events. And then it was an email after that that said, oh, and by the way, how many passes do you need for your panel that you're having on Saturday,
Ooh,
opening weekend? You are the first Star Wars panel of the entire convention.
that's impressive.
And that was not just impressive, but it was it took me back for a second. I was like, wow, time to reflect on how we got here.
Mhm.
Time to reflect on all those episodes. My guess is, and Shaylin and Sean think this as well, that they went to our Spotify, they went to all the episodes that we've done and said, "Holy shit, these people have done 325 episodes in the last 6 years." Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not sure that there's any other podcast out there that can say going into 2024 they're going to hit 400 episodes
Mhm.
in their queue or in their library.
Mhm.
Um, and that was one of the main discussion points when we got to Fan Expo. The team there was absolutely amazing. Everybody, if you get a chance to go out and listen to it and watch the physical version on YouTube, the quality, the quality of video and audio that we got from Fan Expo was just absolutely stellar. And I can remember Sean texting me right away saying, "Holy shit, Fan Expo wants us." And Shaylin was like, "What's Fan Expo?" So I had to kind of explain what Fan Expo was. Um, but it became a whole weekend, and I remember Friday evening when we arrived in Boston, and our panel,
Boston.
Boston, that's right. From your cousin from Boston. Um, we walked up to the convention center with all of our stuff, our equipment and everything, and it kind of hit me because we had been to Fan Expo.
That's where we first met.
That's where we first
also, for those that are in the live chat, I just posted the link to the live stage podcast for Brick City Blockade Fan Expo if you want to check that out.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
But it kind of came back to me. It was like, holy shit, like it wasn't that long ago I was here with Andrew and we were taking pictures and we were, I was hanging out with you and Renee that weekend. And it was such a fantastic weekend, but it hit me walking into the convention center and walking by security after checking in on Friday and them just looking at us and saying, you're good because of our media passes and everything else. That was a really cool experience.
I was so confused by the thumbs up that popped up. I've never seen that happen.
Yeah, it's like a new thing with Apple computers that they're doing.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of cool. You might see fireworks go off behind me at some point too.
Oh, okay. That's just you farting.
Yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. But it was so cool just walking in with our Brick City stuff on. It was really cool on a couple different occasions, walking by some of the booths and everything else. And people were like, oh, your Brick City Blockade podcast. Oh, you have the podcast later. Oh, I've been listening to you guys for like 4 or 5 years. I've been listening to you guys for, such and such. And it kind of hit. It was like, okay, here we are. And we're going to go up from here. It took us a while to get to this point. It took us a while to get these accreditations and whatever else. But for them to look at us at the end of the day after our panel, and I can say this to folks, I got a little emotional, is when the directors of the podcast stage and the director of the con floor itself came up and said, yeah, we'd like to have you next year and every year going forward.
That's awesome.
The fact that we are probably most likely going to be an intricate part of Fan Expo Boston every year going forward. It hits me even just thinking about it, because I think about how much we've put into this and how much, how many tears, how many angry nights, how many,
I witnessed a lot of those angry nights.
Yeah. And
one specific one comes to mind, but
and how many emotional days we had building it up to this point. And yeah, we went on a siesta for a little bit. And like you said, every other good podcast does that. But Fan Expo was kind of that marking point of holy shit. Okay, it's only up from here at this point.
And just the way I view things is those who wait and play the long game, as I like to call it, always get rewarded the most in the end.
Yeah.
It took us almost 10 years to get to where we are now, but the patience and the waiting paid off.
Yeah.
And granted, yeah, we weren't doing a whole lot of podcasts in between, but we were always working on stuff behind the scenes as well.
That's right.
Like, there wasn't a time where we weren't like, hey, let's focus on like maybe the YouTube channel. Let's do something different that just revitalizes Brick City Blockade or even Commander Nerd's channel.
That's right.
And that's where, because we were taking this siesta, that's where I switched gears to YouTube and started building my subscriber base there and everything like that. And that's where I wanted to get a bigger following so I can bring it over to Brick City Blockade as well.
Yep.
And because we're all connected in this.
That's right.
And it just makes me happy that all this is happening. I'm even last year, it was the worst year ever for me.
Oh, 2023.
But seeing and hearing that you guys were going to be on the panel at Fan Expo Boston, if it wasn't 2023, I would have probably been there, but it was just a bad year.
Yeah.
but
Awesome.
I will make sure that I am there this year.
Wonderful.
Guaranteed I am going to be there this
Okay.
year because it has been since 2019 since I've been to Fan Expo. So
Yeah.
the Commander nerd needs to make a return to Fan Expo.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. And I think that's the one thing too. I'm not calling out other podcasts. I'm not, I'm not giving advice here, but maybe I am giving a little bit of advice. And
I mean, you've been in the game for 7 years.
I've been in. So for people, for background, before I got into teaching and before I got into politics and got into doing podcasting, I was actually going to go for broadcasting media. Like I was doing some pre-work with, getting ready to possibly go to Connecticut School of Broadcasting and like actually do that. So, I mean, yeah, the podcast has been around for almost 10 years, but I've been doing a lot of broadcast media and stuff ever since I was like 15. It's been there, but you're right. Having that skin in the game is really important. And you brought up something really important there, Andrew. And that's this whole idea of if somebody goes off and wants to build their own brand, right? It's your friend, it's somebody who has been an intricate part of your project. There's no reason to turn on them and say, well, you're going off and doing your own thing, so you're not allowed back here. I think we all need, maybe this is a reflection for 2024 or a resolution for some folks out there, is that, hey, take a step back and realize that in the podcasting community, we can feed off of each other. Our friendships feed off of each other, and the projects that we work on feed off of each other, right? That cross promotion is critical. And what Andrew just said there is really important too. What you just said is so important, which is I'm going off, I'm building my own channel, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to be on Brick City Blockade. It doesn't mean you're not going to come on my show. That's
I mean,
really,
you're on my show right now.
yeah, exactly. Right? So there you go. So, but I think that there's some truth to honesty, friendship, and not taking everything fucking personally. People need to really grow up. I'm seeing a lot of it on social media, and I try to stay off of it. But you can attest to this too, Andrew. The minute somebody like that was once part of something speaks out against something, it's like, well, I'm so glad I'm not your friend anymore because you feel this way about it. And it's like, just stop. Just stop.
We'll get into that when we get through the politics stuff because I have thoughts on that. Tony, I'll definitely have to try and make it to Fan Expo this year. I've never been since they switched locations. And Murph's Outdoor Adventures, welcome to the channel. We went to Fan Expo 23 and found it was better than PAX East. Honestly, I've never been to PAX East. I've always wanted to go because I know it's mostly video games and stuff like that, and I want to see like how that experience is.
I might have applied for us for press passes for PAX East this year.
Oh, okay, I'll go.
Just throwing that out there to folks that Brick City Blockade might be at PAX East.
Hey, we might get first hands on with the Indiana Jones game that's coming.
I know, that's what I'm thinking. Because
honestly, like, it's weird because I was thinking about it like earlier today. I'm like, it would be cool to have an open world adventure game based in Indiana Jones. And lo and behold, it's like, oh, Bethesda is going to be making it. I'm like, all right, that's the perfect developers to make that kind of game.
So I'm now 4 for 4. Great.
Yeah. But I know you're not much of a gamer now, but let's go back to some nostalgia. What were your go-to video games growing up? 2 years ago.
No, seriously, right? Well, no, I mean, I grew up with an N64 in the house and a GameCube. It was a lot of fun gaming. I was probably like 10 or 11 when I started playing. But I remember specifically on the N64, I can kind of list out what I had. I had Star Wars Pod Racer, which was always a classic.
That was a blast.
One that people, is a really good game, and I watched playthrough the other day. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a flashback. Was Perfect Dark.
I heard about that.
Yeah, it was a fun one. It was a fun game. If folks have the chance to go look it up, watch the gameplay. Really cool, like government agency aliens trying to protect,
Oh, so kind of like Men in Black a little bit.
little bit.
Okay.
I also had Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Everyone had that.
It was a great game. Great game.
What?
Great soundtrack.
Especially when you could get Darth Maul and Pro Skater too.
That was a blast. My favorite one that I continued to play over and over again, though, was Shadows of the Empire.
Mm.
I loved playing as Dash Rendar. That was an absolute blast.
That was a blast of a game. No pun intended, because he's using a blaster, but
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
But I had the Sega Genesis. I don't remember a whole lot of games on that one, but Toe Jam and Earl, I loved playing
Oh
on that.
wow, yeah.
Toe Jam and Earl was such a bizarre game, but I loved it. I also had the original PlayStation, and always was playing Dark Forces, the first one.
First one, yeah.
Which is getting a remaster, and I will play that again. Hopefully I can beat it this time, because it's a pain in the ass of a game. Honestly, Dark Forces and Shadow of the Empire are probably two of the hardest Star Wars games.
Yes, absolutely.
That were made. Which I'm surprised they haven't done a remaster for Shadows of the Empire.
I've been waiting
or have they?
I don't think they have. I know there's an active petition right now, because I've been religiously playing my Nintendo Switch recently.
Mm-hmm.
There's an active petition to get Shadows of the Empire to reboot it, like do a version for Nintendo Switch.
That'd be cool, because they did the Jedi Academy and Outcast games.
Yeah,
on Switch.
Yeah, they're on there. I know there's there's a whole bunch of petitions that I've signed on to. I should just share them on the podcast. For Nintendo Switch to also bring on Rogue Squadron as a game.
Rogue Squadron was the best. I would say the second one is probably the better of the two.
Yeah.
But you can't discredit Jedi Starfighter, though.
Oh, Jedi Starfighter was great.
Jedi Starfighter was great.
That was a great game.
But another one that I played a lot on the original PlayStation was Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. It was basically the Phantom Menace, but you could play as Mace Windu for the first time. This was before Attack of the Clones. So Mace Windu still had the blue lightsaber.
Oh, how cool.
Plo Koon had his yellow lightsaber still. Adi Gallia had a red lightsaber for whatever reason.
That's weird.
Yeah. Obviously, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon were the 5 Jedi you could play as. But the other things you could unlock, you could play as Darth Maul, you could play as Padme, which is like, why?
Interesting. Yeah.
But I always played that one, and it's such a terrible game, but I always played it with my brother. It was Star Wars Master of Teräs Käsi.
That's right.
It's such a bad game, but I always played it.
It's a bad one.
It doesn't make sense why, after the Death Star was destroyed, why the Emperor decided to get this bounty hunter that mastered the Forum of Teräs Käsi, which is just bare knuckle brawling. This is the ultimate weapon for the Empire. Not the Death Star, nothing else. Teräs Käsi.
Teräs Käsi. Oh, that's such a blast. Oh my god, I remember that.
But it makes me excited for the newer Star Wars games that are coming out, like Star Wars Outlaws. Like, I'm excited for that, because you could kind of play as a scoundrel in the Knights of the Old Republic games, but not really. This is the first one where you're playing as a smuggler. This is basically Han Solo's game, just you're a chick, which is like, those complaining about it, it's like, you don't want to stare at a chick as you're playing a game. It's kind of weird.
I don't get people. Yeah.
But the fact that we can go from ground level to space without a loading screen is fantastic to me.
That's right.
And there's just so much to be excited about for not only Star Wars game, but video games as a whole. My
Yeah.
favorite game right now, I love the Spider-Man 2 game, but my favorite game right now is Baldur's Gate 3.
I've been
Those
hearing a lot of good stuff about it. Yeah.
those who want to get introduced to Dungeons and Dragons, Baldur's Gate is the best way to get introduced to Dungeons and Dragons. It's got like this is not bullshit. This is from the creator. There is 3,000 endings to this game.
Whoa.
3,000.
3,000. That's some serious programming. Jeez.
Yeah. And it's just, I love Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I beat it in about a week and I completed everything. And there's not really a whole lot more coming out anytime soon for it. Whereas Baldur's Gate, I have barely scratched the surface with a lot of stuff with Baldur's
Yeah, to
Gate.
get to 3,000 is going to take you a while.
Yeah, I'm going to be like 90 when I get to 3,000. But just being able to create your own character and go on a fantasy adventure, it's the best kind of gaming that I like. But has there been any newer games that's kind of catching your eye, Robin?
I think Star Wars Outlaws, and I keep promising people this, and I gotta just stop. I just gotta stop making promises because I'm like, oh, a new Star Wars game. I'm finally gonna get a PlayStation. New Star Wars game, Battlefront, gonna get a PlayStation. It never happens. Star Wars Outlaws, however, I'm really excited about it. The Indiana Jones game. That's why I mentioned the PAX East getting the passes, because that would be really cool. That is a whole franchise we haven't even touched.
No, there's like the old point and click games from like the 90s that were on a floppy disk.
Yeah, that's right.
They were on a floppy disk. That's how old they were. I had it.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like we're this many years later and we're finally going to get something. That's really exciting as well. I think the one thing that it's not something that I'm excited about, but it's something that I really want to see more of, because I've always loved sports games. Sean and I have always played sports games, but I've always been a fan of them. There's Madden and all these other franchises, NBA, whatever. But there's something that's really lacking when it comes to sports games and esports games right now. And it's that focus on, you can physically play the game, you can bring a team to a championship, the whole thing, right? But there was this awesome game that existed, and there's rumors that they might be re-releasing it in a more modern context, I guess you could say, with modern rules of sports and everything else. And it was NFL Head Coach. And literally,
I remember that.
It was for PlayStation. I remember playing it on my PS2. And it was really cool because you never played any of the physical football games. You actually followed the players on the sideline play by play, and you had 30 seconds to make the calls. But not only that, you could actually like walk up to players and like smack them around and be like, hey, run the football, like actually do it. Like, it was really cool, and it was super immersive. And then you would make financial decisions. Like you would have to say, oh, we're cutting that player and we're signing this player. There was a lot of like in-depth stuff that I think, today I'm specifically thinking about my generation, and our generation, I can say as a whole, that, is interested in sports. But I think more people and this is just in talking with folks, are really more interested in like trades and financial parts of sports, and the betting side of sports and everything else is huge. So I hope to see here in 2024, and I hope the rumors are true, that they're going to bring more of the management side of sports games back that existed in the past. Because I'm tired of just rebuilding a team in MLB and then
Yeah.
just sitting there and like, oh, I'm gonna pitch the ball. I'll pitch. I'll go. Hit the ball, and then I'm crushing teams like 18-3. Like it's just, and that's on the hardest setting. And I'm like, come on, like
Hardest setting. It's on super easy mode.
I mean, sometimes.
Super Weenie Hut Jr.
Super Weenie Hut Jr. Yeah.
But also another thing that gives me even more respect for you is you were a special education teacher, which I love that you did that, and just go through the process of wanting to be a special ed teacher and just your journey in doing that.
Yeah, my mom had been in education when I was little. She had been a teacher herself. She had been a
So you couldn't get in trouble at all.
No. In 4th grade, she actually worked in the classroom next to me. So if I were to misbehave, the paraeducator in my classroom would drag me out into the hallway, go get my mom in the next classroom, and say, "You need to come talk to your son." I couldn't get away with jack shit. 4th and 5th grade. But it was funny because I couldn't get away with jack shit, but I also watched her. I also saw how she interacted with my classmates, my own mother, interacting with my classmates as a paraeducator. And of course, she co-founded the union, which we know right now unions are so important for, workers' rights and all this other stuff. She was the one who co-founded the union that basically gave paraeducators the rights to negotiate for higher wages and for health care and for all the more important things. So I watched her do all of that. And then I got out of high school, and I had always been somebody, a little side story. In 7th grade, when I was in my chorus class, we had a student named Adam who was blind, and we were going on field trips to places here and there. And what was sad was the teachers and not even the paraeducators wanted to help him, didn't understand Adam, to the point where we went on a chorus field trip to Philadelphia, and I literally spent my entire time with Adam throughout Hershey Park. Nobody else wanted him to bed in their room because there was responsibilities there, making sure the room was safe for him. And I said, Adam can come stay with me. Like, I have no problem with that. Like, I understand Adam. Adam understands me. I know how to speak to him. I know how to
You're pretty hard to understand.
Yeah, I'm extremely hard to understand. I fumble on my words, and I'm a babbling idiot half the time. Which was funny because Adam actually brought that up to me. He's like, "Can you talk a little bit clearer, please?" Which I thought was great. If the blind kid in school is telling you he can't understand you,
it's
then
bad.
You got to take a step back here and realize, you got to work on yourself a little bit. But Adam was wonderful. And I remember my course teacher coming up to me towards the end of the trip and said, "Did you enjoy the trip? Because you spent so much time with Adam." And I was actually bold enough. I'm surprised I didn't get in trouble for saying this. I looked at him and I said, "Oh, so you're going to say that I had a horrible trip because I spent it with a blind student, with a blind classmate of mine?"
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? And he was like, "Well, you don't have to talk back to me like that." I'm like, "No." I said that's extremely that's harmful. And if Adam was sitting in the chorus room and heard you say that, you'd have a bigger problem on your hand. So I felt like over the years, I always gravitated to helping other students out that needed it. So that to the point when I got through community college and through Great Bay and into my degree, I realized that, I need to really focus my attention on helping kids, like I helped Adam and how Adam helped me. That's the thing that I think a lot of educators maybe forget about sometimes is the kids are helping you as much as you are helping them. So I got into special education, and, my first couple of students were really rough. The toughest one for me was my third year fourth year of being a special educator. And I had a student who had a severe seizure disability. And I learned everything I needed to about ambulances and how to call for 911 and how to handle somebody who's consistently having a seizure, and needs assistance, and also needs to also academically be able to meet the requirements um, that are in school.
Mhm.
So that was my greatest challenge, and I regret none of it. A lot of people look at me and say, "How did you do that for 4 years? How did you work with that student for 4 years and not burn out?" And I said to him, I was like, "I'm not there now. It didn't burn me out then. It took a while for it to in order to actually burn me out."
Mhm.
Um, but for folks who are wondering, I did 10 years. I spent 10 years in the classroom in special education. I started right out of high school
Mhm.
doing this work.
Yeah, because when I joined the podcast, you were still, well, you were in your senior year of college, or
I was in my
for.
yeah, yep. I was in my last year of college, and I was a paraeducator. I was going to school, taking 4 courses a semester, and still teaching full time.
Mhm.
Yeah, and had the podcast and everything else on top
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, I really credit my mom. I do. I watched her for years. I learned so much from her, and then I got to work with her for over 8 years
Mhm.
at the same school, and we kind of fed off of each other in terms of working with students and BS to each other at the end of the day about coworkers. Um, and I don't regret a single bit of it. I know there are a lot of educators out there now who probably look back at their time and are like, "Oh, I could have done something more, or I could have done something different during that time."
Mhm.
But I regret none of it. It was so important to my development as a human being, and working with kids is like one of the greatest honors
Mhm.
in my mind.
Yeah, shout out to Mama Vogt for raising a good little bean.
That's a kind of a big bean now, but yeah.
It's still kind of little.
Uh,
What? What?
Nothing. I
It's
know what you're
something.
saying over there.
What?
You were in a hotel room with no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I jumped from my bed to your bed. I
Yeah, there was
soared through the air like the Eagles.
I still wish there was video evidence of that. That would have been hilarious.
It was like perfect form too.
It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. Yeah, no, my little bean. Nope, never mind. Sorry.
Well, it wasn't that little bean I was talking about, but
Oh,
if you
okay. All
want
right.
to go that way, we can. um, but another thing that you are really passionate about is music, and you had what was it you did with your dad? The Trinity
Yeah,
wear.
Trinity Eyewear clothing business. Yeah,
Mhm.
it started as a seventh grade business project, and it took off. We got very involved in the reggae community. I was a reggae DJ for over 6.5 years. I was doing gigs, opening up for bands and everything else. It was a lot of fun, and reggae music has always been really important to me. It's a very niche thing amongst most genres, but it's funny that you bring it up with music. I think that we're going to see a resurgence in reggae music when the Bob Marley movie comes out and hits
Yeah,
theaters.
absolutely. I
I
mean,
think.
look at Bohemian Rhapsody, the researching for Queen after
Oh yeah,
that came out, or
huge.
even
Yeah,
Elvis. Like there was a resurgence for that.
yeah.
And um, going back to music, what were your influences growing up, and what are your influences now with
Oh,
music?
good question. Um, Bob Marley was a huge influence of mine, which is why I'm so excited about the movie. I would sit up at night listening to his music, and not for nothing, he was a major part of my political upbringing as well.
Mhm.
A lot of the stuff that Bob Marley talked about in his music was what I took into my own political work as well. But what I'm trying to think about in terms of other influences. I mean, to be honest with you, Rage Against the Machine. My dad introduced me to Rage Against the Machine. And talk about political, I mean,
Mhm.
incredible music, number one.
Mhm.
Um, I would sit up and I would be just cruising through Rage Against the Machine, and then God, who else did I listen to? I listened to Pearl Jam, all those 90s grunge
Mhm.
hard rock groups were just absolute Foo Fighters. Green Day started
Mhm.
taking over after that. And Good Charlotte, I listened to Good Charlotte as well, heading into early 2000s. But the influence was always really there with political rock music that was really hard into
Mhm.
that. Um, and it's varied over the years, of course. um but yeah, I would say of all of them, Bob Marley, in terms of kind of that cool collected political music, was always big. But right there, Rage Against the Machine, man,
Mhm.
like, you want to get fired up, you start listening to did they do what they told you, dun, 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 dun,
Mhm.
do what they told you, like, it's it.
Yeah, a lot of my influences were through my dad,
Yeah.
as well. Like from the Beatles to like Led Zeppelin to like
Mhm.
the Zombies,
Oh, wow, the
um,
Zombies, yeah.
which I actually saw the Zombies at the South Shore Music Circus when they did Hippie Fest. They were one of the
Oh,
guests there, so I saw the Zombies in a concert.
that's the Zombie. Wow.
Yeah. And then I started to branch off into like some uh heavy metal stuff like Black
Yeah.
Sabbath, Metallica,
Heck yeah. Yeah.
Slipknot. Slipknot was probably the heaviest stuff I got into as a kid.
Yeah.
And then of course Green Day was probably the first band that I stopped and really listened to the lyrics, especially when American Idiot came out.
Yeah.
Every song, there is a message behind that.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's why I'm glad with Saviors coming out, their newest album, which is coming out on the 19th. No, just a plug for Green Day. They don't need my help, um, but it's that feeling of like, oh, there's still that punk rock band out there that's still talking about the stuff that's important.
Yeah.
Um, which we'll get into their performance when we get into a little bit of the political stuff. But I'm also getting into, well, I've been into Ice Nine Kills, which is
Resident Kills is great.
a metalcore band, which those who don't know are their theme. Every song is based on a horror movie or a horror book, like The Shining, uh, Nightmare on Elm Street, basically all the classic slashers and everything like that. And I was lucky enough to go to their concert at Silver Scream Con last year, and
Mm.
it was probably the most fun I've had at a concert. They not only put on a great concert, but they're also putting on like a actual show because people are like dressed up as like Ghostface from Scream, like
Right.
Michael Myers and stuff like that, and getting killed on stage and stuff like that.
Well, that's cool.
They are so hardcore into horror. They have a song based on Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Wow.
um, and I've been introduced to. I've listened to them here and there, but I'm really getting into Motionless in White, which Dave and I saw them for their Halloween show in Boston. It was actually their last show on their tour, which is also really cool.
That's great.
Um, but the thing that took me by complete surprise last year, the Beatles released their last song. I did not think I would live in an era where the Beatles would release a song.
You're right.
What did you think of the song when it was released?
I think the Apple acquisition of the Beatles and their cooperation with Paul McCartney and the different estates
Mhm.
was kind of a telling sign of, okay, they're not done yet. Like, they're still going to release stuff. They're still going to put out, never before released things. But to think that in 2023 we would still see brand new Beatles releases,
Mhm.
and then hearing it, I was like, "Whoa, whoa, like flashbacks." Like you're pulled back into a different time,
Mhm.
and to think that in 2023 we can still have that experience. I mean, I think we're gonna see. I think the Beatles have now set the standard for other bands going forward.
Mhm.
That
Especially with unfinished work, because
unfinished
it
work, yeah,
was an unreleased song from John Lennon.
yeah,
And he wrote it in like the mid 70s when he was on his hiatus after having Sean. And it's interesting how the lyrics work. Because, like, he could be talking about Paul, he could be talking about Yoko, he could be talking about anything. The lyrics are like, it might not be the best Beatles song,
correct.
but the fact that we got a Beatles song in 2023 and the fact that it was enhanced by AI,
Yeah,
that's the only case of AI that I don't mind, is that it enhanced the ability to have this song released, because one, it's closure for Paul and Ringo, and it's the last time we would hear Paul and John sing together.
mhm,
And the way their vocals harmonized, even with AI, it's still unmatched. Like, there
yeah,
hasn't been a band since the Beatles that had harmonies matched like Paul and John's.
mhm.
And it's that part of me that I still wish my dad was here to listen to hear the song. But at the same time, the way the lyrics worked, it also helped me with my thoughts on stuff. Um, but yeah, it's there was like talks of like them releasing the song at some point, but it's like, hey, by the way, this is coming out like in 2 days.
Yeah, it was like so sudden. Like, yeah, you're right. It was teased for a while. It was teased for a while, but we didn't know when.
And yeah, it was just so cool to not only hear, but the fact that they had a music video already set for it. And
Yeah,
like just seeing the raw footage of like them originally working on it, like George's guitar stuff that he laid down on the track in '95.
yeah,
And it's just impressive with how technology is now, but it's also very risky with what they're doing with technology too.
yeah.
And I don't want to go the nerd route, but there is 6 movies of why being not very careful with technology is a bad idea.
That's true.
Because, there was Skynet, which was AI created,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
then Skynet created Terminators. Japan's working on AI robots that have emotions and they leave them alone for hours and days on end. I don't want Judgment Day to happen. We already went through a pandemic. We don't need
Yeah, we don't need the
we
yeah,
don't need a nuclear war.
that's so true.
um, but I haven't really talked to you about your political stuff. When was it that you decided you wanted to get into the political scene,
Mm.
and what was your motivation behind wanting to run for Senate and everything like that,
Yeah, I mean,
or state, whatever you ran for?
yeah, no. I mean, running for state representative was not something I had on my bingo card in life right away. It was a late addition. I'd always been very interested in politics. I'd always been involved in politics. I was actually the youngest campaign staff member of the 2008 Barack Obama campaign
Oh
in
wow.
the New Hampshire Seacoast. And I was 16 at that time, 15 or 16 at that time. and it was an experience. I sat across the table one evening with one of the Kennedys, making phone calls for Barack, and I remember having dinner with a Kennedy,
Mhm.
and just being in that room with him talking about politics and what my future was, and some of the things that I wanted to do, with a Kennedy, with somebody who had been
Yeah.
very involved in politics, political royalty.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a really great experience, and it kind of stuck with me. Um, and you know, when I ran for state representative, finally, I was like, okay, it's time. The need for younger leadership, in New Hampshire, was an important thing for me. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, if I can bring a younger perspective to things in Concord, then I'm gonna do it. And I lost in 2020, and I ran in 2022, and I finally won. And it was a great experience. Um, you know, the thing about politics is once you're in it, it looks really great from the outside. I'll say that. Like the prospect of being elected by people in your community to
Mhm.
represent them in this ultimate body of government, is really cool. And to have that opportunity to sit in the New Hampshire House and to vote on things and to work on bills and be in committees and get that stuff done, I wouldn't trade this past year for anything. Um, Unfortunately, on December 1st, I had to step down from my role because, sometimes life, what ends up happening is that you have to move on from things and you have to
Mhm.
make that next step. So for Shaylin and I, it was this year getting married and having a house to live in and preparing for a family. That's a big step, and sometimes you have to put things aside. But politics has always been with me, and having this 1 year of being a state representative and being involved in activism. Before I got into politics, I was at rallies. You remember seeing pictures of me
Mhm.
holding signs, and BLM was a huge movement that I wanted to get involved in, especially during the pandemic and whatnot. And so my political activism was a big factor in all that. And everybody still asks me now that I'm out of the New Hampshire House and resigned. They say to me, they're like, Robin, are you going to stick to politics? And I can tell you already, I've only been out of it a month, and I'm already looking at, okay, how can I get on Durham Town Council? How can I prepare for a run for governor someday? How can I do all these things?
Mhm.
Because once you're in it and you have your connections and you have the people that you want to be involved with in politics, it's hard to step away from it.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of it comes down to, and I know you and I have talked about this, and I'm going to be really honest here. It's time for some people to step aside. It's time
Mhm.
for the people who have been in office for 50 plus years to say, okay, time for the next generation to come in and to pass laws that benefit our generation and
Mhm.
benefit people who are going to have to take on climate change, who are going to have to take on the things that could ultimately wipe us off the face of the earth.
Mhm.
And somebody who has political experience is really important, right? Somebody who's been in office and has passed bills and done things, they're important, right? But there also comes a time when you say, okay, but are you the right person to handle this?
Mhm.
Do are you the one that's going to have to bear the burden of this? And
Yeah.
the answer almost 99.9% of the time is no. So I always encourage young people to run, like I was encouraged to run for office. Um, and don't be afraid to do it. A lot of people were like, "Oh my goodness, no, 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 no thumbs up for that. No, no, no thumbs up for that. Don't listen to that. Um, you know, don't listen to the thumbs up." But people are a lot. People come to me and like, "Oh, it's such a scary thing to do." I'm going to be honest with you. I won my state rep race with $800 in the bank. That's it. So these people that come out and say, well, you need 15, 20, $25,000 to win as state representative or as such and such. But I call bullshit. I call bullshit because if you talk to people, if you actually knock the doors of homes, if you actually
Mhm.
want to talk to the people that you live around in your community, you can do it.
Mhm.
So, and I think it comes back to something you said earlier. It's like when the opportunity was presented to you to join the podcast. It's just literally talking to people and welcoming them in with open arms because they're passionate about something.
And I remember you talking to me about wanting to get into more of the political side of stuff. It was like probably around 2019.
2019 was big.
About that. And that's when we had kind of a riff. That's the history of Brick City Blockhead. There was a riff for a while.
Yeah.
And things happened. Friendships ended. Some things are mending now. But I was more, I think what I said, I'm like, hey, if you want to do this, go and do it. Nothing's stopping you. Yeah. And I think I even said, I'm like, you would be great for this scene because you have an open mind. I think one of the first real conversations we had was like off camera after the podcast and stuff like that. I think one of the real first conversations we had was like me telling you I'm bisexual and all that stuff. And you were like, that's great. And everything like that. And it was that viewpoint where it was like, okay, if he's going to get into politics, I want him on my side because one, he's an ally. And two, you have a great mind and you are great with people. I'm not so great with people. I get angry quite a lot. And I say things before I think about it. I'm fire ready aim. Basically.
Fire ready aim, yeah.
And I am so proud with how much you've accomplished. And I have so much respect for you for following your dreams and sticking to it. Whether friendships ended, whether you were busy, like not doing the podcast, too busy, like weren't able to hang out as much. I am more proud of you than I've ever been because of everything you've accomplished, and you have grown so much as an actual person regardless. Like you, like 2019, 2018 Robin, he was a great guy. But there were times I did want to wring your neck.
Yeah. I told Shaylin, thank God you didn't meet that version of Robin. I'll tell you that much.
But you are engaged to your best friend, basically.
Yeah.
And I am so happy I was there for your proposal to her. And I can see how happy you both are. And it makes both me and Renee happy. And you are, when eventually you do, you will be a great father.
Oh, thank you.
And I can tell you will be.
Yeah, we're excited. Thank you. We're excited.
You're short than me, Renee.
What is Renee doing? What, she comes on here? She's in the other room, isn't she?
She's upstairs. You're shorter than me.
That's too short. What's making it is the picture of the cat.
I know. Yeah, you're right. Happy wife, happy life. You're right.
That's absolutely right. I am riding that storm until September this year. I'm telling you that.
Hey guys, smack the like button. Appreciate that.
Hey, thanks, caveman.
That's
great.
But going
those things,
back to the Green Day performance this past New Year's, or New Year's Eve, they did their song "American Idiot." They changed a little bit of the lyrics from "I'm not part of a redneck agenda" to "I'm not part of a MAGA agenda."
Yeah.
Those who are saying Green Day shouldn't get political, are they just discovering Green Day now? Because that's the whole premise of American Idiot. It was under the Bush regime.
Yeah.
Like, that was all about that. Like, American Idiot still holds strong to today, and it's
300%.
celebrating its 20th anniversary today, which makes me feel so old.
And it's sad that that the political landscape hasn't changed in 20
No,
years.
it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse. Yeah.
And this is my viewpoint on it. We've been fucked the last 31 years of mine and 30 years of your life.
Yeah. 100%.
We have been fucked since probably what, Bush Sr.?
Yeah, Bush Sr. really sent it over the edge.
And I miss the days when two opposite spectrums of the political scene could have a civil conversation and be like, all right, I understand where you're coming from. I don't agree with it, but we're still civil. I hate the fact that it's either one person's way or it's all war. The way I hate seeing the country divided. And there's just so much other stuff that we could be more worried about than who's supporting MAGA, who's whatever. If you support MAGA, I kind of whatever. But you're entitled to support that. And if you're a friend of mine who votes for Trump, I'm not going to look at you any differently. The thing I don't like is those who deliberately beat down others and don't want them to have a voice or anything like that. And it's getting to the point where people are shying away from talking about politics, which is why I'm like, no, we're talking about that today.
Right. Yeah. It's and you know, it's funny. Shaylin and I last night watched the Trevor Noah special on Netflix, and he said something that it was so interesting. He brought up his experience of going to Berlin, Germany on his tour, and how how Germans specifically have in their history have said, hey, we understood what we did. We understand how bad it was. We're going to fix this. So they offered reparations to Jewish German citizens. They offered those directly affected by the Holocaust. They changed their national anthem, right? They didn't remove they removed certain propaganda and everything else, but they're not afraid to teach the kids, hey, this is what so and so did here in Germany. We're going to teach it to you because we don't want it to repeat again. Here in America, this is full politics perspective here, right? We are so quick to want to remove things from textbooks. We are so quick to want to bring up something else because it's hiding something else. So one of the things Trevor Noah said was, why are we talking about which gender goes into a bathroom? Why is it such a huge ass deal? It's a bathroom. If somebody wants to go to a specific stall in a specific bathroom, just go do it. Nobody really cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. But the political agenda of America is, let's make this a big deal so it can distract from the $800 billion that we send in defense money to our military rather than feeding people at home.
Or, housing the ex-military.
Housing vets, right? Getting them medical care. The people who have already served, who are here now and are not getting what they need because they decided that they wanted to serve their nation. Right? So there's all these things that exist, and I thought Trevor Noah brought it up beautifully. And it's that same thing with Green Day, what you brought up, right? If you're just realizing now that Green Day is political, and it's a very specific group of people that are saying, whoa, we're gonna boycott Green Day. Okay, that's fine. It's not going to change Green Day's number.
No.
The amount of albums they're selling. It's only 23% of you that are yelling about this. There's still another, 86, 87% of you out there that love Green Day. So go ahead. It's a free nation of thought. You go ahead and you do that. But it's just so frustrating, and I'm glad you bring that up.
This is actually perfectly said right here.
Yeah, here we go.
Clickbait supports controversy, supports division and hate, and unfortunately, society promotes it by making everything salacious.
Yeah,
that is absolutely 1000% correct.
Yeah, clickbait
and like, I still can't get over those that are like, oh, they need to not be political. It's like that's the whole point of punk rock. Like, do they not get that? That's what the machine that they're raging against.
The thing that's trending on Twitter right now, Andrew, too, is this whole thing of George Lucas never meant Star Wars to be political, and now they're putting out the video of George Lucas explaining exactly why Star Wars is political.
Yeah, the Empire is. I'm sorry to break it to you. The Empire is America. The rebels are Viet Cong in the original trilogy.
Yes, correct.
Star
and over
Wars
the years
has always been political.
Always.
The original trilogy was a different political message, basically.
Yes.
George Lucas was paying attention to everything that was going on in the political scene. That's right. Why during the prequels, that was why it had a heavier political influence and what was going on in America at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
so this
that's
idea
where
say that is just
we'll get into the sequel trilogy stuff because there wasn't a whole lot of political stuff in there.
Yeah, right.
We'll get on to that with Brick City Blockade.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, like, there just needs to be. We need to be more united than divided. And the more that we kill each other and everything like that, the weaker we will be as a nation. And yeah. Yeah, that's just put more stalls in the bathroom, remove signs.
Actually, it's interesting that Caveman brings that up because Shaylin and I, we regularly stay at this hotel in Portland, Maine called Canopy, and they have an all genders bathroom that basically is that. It's just stalls. You go into it, and it's your own stall, and you come out and you wash your hands and you leave.
Yeah,
right. It's a full private stall. It's great. And I looked at her at one point and I said, "Why haven't we just been doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? Why are we just getting?" No.
Gus has the right
point. So, Gus, are you saying that you hold your pee until you get home? Essentially,
I mean, I usually do too. So
okay, I'm just I you know. Oh, you know what? Yeah, Gus. Actually, what you can do is you can write a nice little letter to the Pentagon and say, "Hey, I've got this amazing, slate of movies and whatever else, and I'm sure there's some money there that they can drop for you."
Yeah, but the other thing that baffles me with specific people is how bothered they get this is what I've been viewing the last few months, especially when I've been in contact a little bit with the band The Funeral Portrait from their band down from Georgia. Mm-hmm. And two of their band members do kiss, and they are both guys.
Yeah.
Didn't bother me one bit when, honestly, as soon as we sat down for the concert for Ice Nine Kills, the two band members already kissed on stage, and it's like, all right, cool. And I don't know what band this was, but because of the two band members kissing, they didn't want them on the tour with them, which is bizarre to begin with. And it's like, why is it okay to see two women kissing and be completely fine, but if it's two guys, there's an issue. Like, like, all right, I'm gonna get well. There's nothing spicy to talk about, but when we were at Silver Screen Con and at the casino, not last year but the year before, Dave and I slept in the same bed together. He's as straight as can be, and we're that comfortable with each other. We can share beds. All four of us shared beds at Silver Screen Con. Like, I don't get where those people are like, oh, I can't stand when two guys kiss or whatever. And it's like, but you're fine seeing two women kiss. It's basically the exact same thing, just two guys. Why is it disgusting there? But I don't know. It's stuff like that that just doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. I agree, Andrew. It doesn't at all.
I'll show you something that's gay. That guy right there.
Hey, whoa! I didn't know I was going to get a feature spot. Whoa! Excuse you. And I get feature spots like that for such comments. Wow. There's even commentary behind that. That guy right there. I know.
But the other thing that I do want to bring into I mean, is he wrong? Just kidding, because about the full screen with you.
Yeah, I mean, Renee's right.
Everyone's a little bisexual. I'm just saying.
I fully agree. I fully agree.
But the thing that I do want to start bringing into my podcast is mental health. And I feel like it's not talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Didn't you hear they announced Brokeback Mountain 2 featuring two women supposed to be the next Barbie? Oh, fuck. Sign me up.
Wow. Caveman was breaking news.
I know. But mental health, I feel like it's not talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
And last year was terrible on my mental health. And I want, from your perspective, those who are struggling with mental health issues, whether it's depression, gender identity disorder, anything, from your own experience with mental health and stuff like that, what would you give for advice for someone that's struggling with their mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, and I've had these conversations a lot recently, and you know, I'm gonna say this as a guy too. As guys, we're told to bottle our emotions up.
Mm-hmm.
We're told, put all of your emotions in a little box and put that box off to the side. Do not show your emotions. Do not show how sad you are. Do not cry. Don't do that. It's going to show how weak you are. Right? That exists. And one of the things that I was taught early on was emotional intelligence. Was that, listen, if you feel something, if you feel that emotion and you feel that you need to cry, just do it. Just do it. And that was my mom that actually taught that to me. And my dad kind of reinforced it. My dad is, big shout out to Daddy O. As much as he kept it in.
Papa Vogt.
He was a very emotional man. And he showed it in really important moments for my sister and I. And that kind of showed me that, yeah, you know what? I don't need to listen to society tell me that I need to bottle up my emotions. I need to be present and I need to be aware of how I feel. Mm-hmm. And that's not easy for everybody. And again, I'm not a licensed psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just an educator. I'm somebody who's worked with kids who have been through this. And one of the things that I always will say, whether it comes to gender identity, whether it comes to physical or mental frustrations and anxieties. Don't bottle it in. Talk to somebody, a trusted adult, a doctor, a medical professional that you trust. And please don't be afraid to be honest with somebody about how you feel as well, because sometimes when we have those anxieties and those emotions, we try to scale it back, right? We try to play victim a little bit. We're like, oh, nobody wants to listen to my problems. No, I don't want to burden somebody with how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice has always been, no, if you feel strong about something, or if you feel like you've hit a point where you yourself can't hold in the emotions that you're feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it's time for you to find help, whether that's in that trusted adult or that medical professional or anybody else. And also, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to pick up a piece of paper or a journal and write this stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes watching yourself write your emotions out, there's a storytelling aspect to that. You know, there's a lot of good that can come from self realizing this is how I feel. These are the emotions that I'm going through right now. And I can actually flip a page and read how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and tell that story in my mind about, you know, this is a very specific time in my life where I felt this way. Sometimes I go back and I go through my own writing in my own journals where I was like in 5th grade, and I had a crush on a girl or something, and I decided to write it down, and then I find out she's interested in somebody else, and then I look at my writing after and how sad I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a very small perspective. There are people out there dealing with bigger issues right now. Here in New Hampshire, people who and people in the LGBTQAI plus community are being actively attacked because they decided, hey, you know what? I identify as they them. I identify as transgender. I identify as somebody that I feel represents me best. This is who I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak to that because I'm not somebody who identifies as that. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to speak to that. But what I can be is I can be an ally, and I can say, hold on a second here. There are resources available to you, but also understand that, that self-realization and your ability to recognize this is who I am and to step out proudly into the world and to express that is powerful, no matter what anybody says about you or what kind of pressures they put on you.
Mm-hmm.
Be proud of it, be loud about it. And don't be afraid to self-reflect, to write, to find those people that you can talk to. That's always been a big thing for me. But when it comes specifically to depression, I know, Andrew, you yourself
Mm-hmm.
have dealt with depression. That's a tough one, and I've watched it in students, and I've watched it in myself. And one of the best things that I ever did was come out and talk about it. Like, actually actively admit, hey, you know what? Folks, family, people I love, I'm depressed right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need you to be there. That's like the first part of that self-realization,
Mm-hmm.
is just coming out and recognizing and hearing yourself say, I'm depressed and I need somebody to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. That is the ultimate first step. And I know, Andrew, you have always been so honest, whether it's been you stepping away from your YouTube videos,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it's been in conversations we've had privately, or conversations as a podcast. You've brought it up actively on episodes of the podcast.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. And I think the more we recognize as a society that socioeconomic pressures of not just men, but of all people,
Mm-hmm.
men, women, children, no matter who you are, coming out and saying, this is what I'm going through right now, and I literally just need somebody to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. That's huge. I know it's a long-winded way of getting to it, but
Now,
it's
honestly, I love your answer, and I just want to pinpoint a couple of comments we got while you were talking about it. We have Miss Caveman here. Hey all, first time watching your stream. I'm a mental health therapist. Thank you for talking about mental health. The more we can normalize mental illness, the more people will get help. Thank you.
thank you. Yeah.
And we have Caveman here saying someone suffering from confusion of gender identity. Yes, they should feel comfortable about talking to someone, but they also need to be smart about who they talk to, because there are creeps out there.
That is absolutely true,
And
Caveman.
then he did kind of make light. I fight depression, but hey, I live in a dark, gloomy cave.
Hey, and you know what? I love that perspective though, because
Mhm.
sometimes what we need is to live in that dark, gloomy cave for a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes actively participating in our depression. And that goes back to what Mrs. Caveman said there, right? That was
Mhm.
that whole, you know, bringing awareness to it
Mhm.
is the first step towards recognizing that it's no longer a voodoo thing to talk about our mental health, right?
No.
There needs to be more public conversation about it. I can say it as a former state representative in Concord, New Hampshire. You know, I there were so many different conversations that came up politically about, how do we address mental health? How do we address, um, drug abuse with the opioid epidemic and everything else?
Mhm.
People overusing certain drugs and being prescribed things that they no longer need. And there's this whole victimization, right? Or this not victimization. I'm sorry, that's not the best word. Making these people seem like they're criminals,
Mhm.
right? It's why we got into the place that we are today, is because we've criminalized mental health.
Mhm.
If you are mentally unstable, then you need to go somewhere else. You should be on the street right now.
Mhm.
There's nothing your government can do to help you right now. And we don't recognize that by having the conversation and providing resources. What a thought.
Mhm.
What a thought. Let's actually invest in services that help people's mental health. Crazy thought.
Crazy.
Absolutely crazy thought, right? But we need to start turning the conversation towards people who are suffering from depression, from mental illness, from
Mhm.
opioid abuse, whatever else. These people are not criminals.
No.
They are simply calling out for help. And we need to do something about it.
Mhm. I agree 100%. And like you've brought up, I have been very vocal about my bouts with depression, and it comes and goes. Some days are good, some days are bad.
Yeah.
Of course, last year it was very touch and go.
Yeah.
You all who have been on this journey with me do know my dad passed away last year.
Yeah.
Then 2 weeks after my uncle passed away, so it was two deaths in my family back to back, and it took a heavy toll on me. Like, I isolated myself from a couple of people, and yeah, I would go out with the Steelbook crew and stuff like that, but I was putting on more of a I'm okay face, but
Yeah.
on the inside, I was like, no, I'm just here. Um, it has gotten better. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not 1000% okay. I probably never will be 1000% okay. And that is
Mhm.
okay.
100.
Um, I have also been candid that I have had suicidal thoughts back in my youth, and it's very common in uh teenage years and even into adult life. Um, there were a couple occasions where I did think about, like, hey, maybe people would be better off without me. And I haven't had thoughts of that for 10 years or so now. Um, and the more we are able to, one, talk about it,
Yeah.
two, men's mental health needs to be taken more seriously because, like Robin said, we are conditioned to bottle things up, and bottling things up isn't good.
No.
And 2 years ago, one of the uh, one of these people you would never think is depressed or anything, Jason David Frank, who was the Green Ranger and Power Rangers and stuff like that, he took his own life, and he had bouts with depression and stuff like that. And to have to feel like you have no one to talk to about this stuff, and it's the way the human brain works, and it makes you feel like you're a burden to people,
Yeah.
and people would be better off without you. I have had she wasn't like a close friend, but I would talk to her here and there. I had a friend a few years ago take her own life, and she had a bad rap. She had very abusive relationships, and she was like, why should I stay here? And unfortunately, one night she did take her own life, and it's I know she's no longer suffering, um, but I do wish there was like maybe there's something I could have done, like hey, I could have messaged her or something like that. But there are times, and this is just my perspective because I've dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those who have already made up their mind about suicide, they're going to go through with it at some point.
Mm.
It might not be that night that you stop them. It could be 3, 4 months from then. It could be a year from then. Sometimes there's not enough to help. And sometimes those who aren't fully able to stop said person from committing suicide or anything like that, don't punish yourself for what happened. Think about the good stuff that you had with your friend and stuff like that. Let the memory live on instead of holding on to that dark moment.
Yeah.
And that's what I have been doing since my dad's passing and my uncle Paul. I've been thinking about all the stuff my dad taught me and what we would talk about, and thinking of music and everything like that with him. And it this is just for me itself. If you're ever feeling like you are in a dark place or anything like that, reach out to someone.
Yeah.
I would rather hear your story than your obituary or your eulogy. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
It's good. Yeah.
There was a couple. Okay, man, I was raised by a parent who suffered from mental illness. I have been taught to hide and be ashamed about my mental health as a result. Gus, do you take any medications for your depression? No, I don't take any medication for it. I used to take medication for my ADHD, and it kind of made me more of a zombie than anything. I don't really take any medication, but if I am feeling depressed, I do listen to music, or I do kind of just go into like a Zen kind of mode and just kind of decompress and stuff like that. And Laren, I can't believe Andrew is growing his hair out for a year. I didn't agree to grow it out for a year. I worked for a certified community mental health center when Medicaid was opened up to those who didn't have insurance. The influx was overwhelming, and we're still trying to keep up with the demand.
Yeah.
I agree.
Need more therapists.
First time popping in here, but big fan of the channel, and thank you for talking about these very serious issues. 988 is the National Mental Health Hotline, open 24/7. You can text or call even if you're not suicidal, but just need someone to talk to. Yes, thank you, Miss Caveman. But yeah, it might be a downer, but it is stuff that we do need to talk about, and unfortunately, that is part of real life. Things aren't always sunshine and rainbows, and there are some dark stuff we do have to talk about. But kind of wrapping up a little bit of stuff. Top 5 movies in your own category from youth to now. What would be your top 5 movies that you right now would choose to go and watch?
Okay, top 5. So number 5, I would put Muppets Treasure Island.
Okay.
Love Muppets Treasure Island. It's silly, but of course it's just Muppets. It's I always
plus you got Tim Curry as a pirate captain.
I mean, yeah.
I think I might have talked to you about this, but Tim Curry was the reason I found out I was bisexual.
Yes.
It was,
that too, yeah.
It was Rocky Horror Picture Show. Him and those nylons. It just did it for me.
It's great because he was coming right off Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then it was Muppets Treasure Island. I mean, we all know Robin is secret. Oh my God, Shaylin said that to me the other day, Renee. Oh my God. How did you know that?
I mean, look at you.
A goddamn Muppet.
You're kind of like Gonzo.
Now that's a compliment. I'll take that. I will take that. Number 4 for me is Star Wars Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
All time. Number 3 is the first Back to the Future. Love the first Back to the Future. Number 2 is going to have to be see, this one's always tough for me. I'm gonna put Arrival at number 2. I love Arrival. Okay. Such a great alien movie, I guess you could say, but it's not an alien movie. It's a thriller at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. And then number one, it's going to be an animated movie.
Okay.
It's one that I grew up with. It's the first Toy Story.
Okay. I can respect that.
Love Toy Story. Had my Buzz, had my Woody growing up. Was a movie that I always wanted to have. I had the VHS of it. I had the green VHS of Toy Story.
Oh, that one's super rare.
Which was a rare one, and I think I smashed it when I was 10 because I got mad. I was a real asshole at 10 and 11. Still am. But Toy Story was always been, and of course it varies my top 5, but I've been really into looking back at some of the animated films, the early Pixar films, and how they affected me as a kid and as an adult. Yeah. Toy Story.
A lot of animated films growing up, they hit differently now.
Yeah.
If you had them as an adult.
Yeah, it's very true.
Okay, man. One thing I hate is people that hate people and calling people who do take their own life idiots rather than having any empathy or even try to understand what they were going through. I agree 1,000%.
100%.
Gus says Miss Porgy is my favorite Muppet. I think he means Miss Piggy.
I'd love to know who Miss Porgy is, though. Is that like a long?
It's a Porg from Last Jedi as Miss Piggy.
Oh, us, you son of a bitch! You figured it out.
Chuck Norris. I don't have a top 5, but I will say my favorite horror movie is the original Friday the 13th, and I have a story for why it is. All right, Chuck, what is said story for that? Pigs in Space is one of my favorite Muppet skits.
Yeah,
And
pigs in space.
Laren still has his Toy Story VHS.
My man, Laren. There we go.
Who's Miss Poggy?
Miss Pookie. Gus, we're struggling big time over here.
But my top 5 is.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Oh,
Robert resembles the shop owner from Toy Story. Oh no, you're Al. So you're Newman.
Yeah, I'm Newman, basically. Jerry. Newman.
It was one of the first horror movies I'd ever seen, and my dad didn't really watch movies, but he liked the Jason movies, but I couldn't remember Jason, so he just said, put on hockey mask.
Put it on.
Yes, Robin needs to do an Alice Toy Barn cosplay for Fan Expo Boston and wear the cosplay while we're doing the live podcast at Fan Expo.
You know, I'll do it. You know, this is the thing, and I think people need to understand this. The history that Renee and I have, is that Renee finds the most ridiculous things that I need to do in order not just to make myself an idiot, but for her to be in the convention hall going, ha, 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 because they're great moments. I will do the Al's I will be in the chicken suit. It
will be amazing. But yeah, my top 5 would be Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, good
for
one.
number 5. I keep going back and forth with all 3, but Fellowship of the Ring is probably my favorite of the trilogy, just because of like the group getting together and everything like that.
Yep.
4 would be probably Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man.
Okay.
Just because of seeing it as a kid in the theater. And it was our first exposure to Spider-Man besides the animated series from the 90s, which is still amazing.
Yeah, that is.
No pun intended for Spider-Man, but
no, of course not.
I mean, you will always be the prettiest Barbie girl, Robin.
Oh boy.
The only movies. Oh, we already got that. Oh, never mind. Hold on. The only movies my dad really watched was Friday the 13th and all 4 of the Lethal Weapons. We had a friend that had them on VHS and he would borrow them a lot.
Oh.
Back in the day when we would just borrow VHSs.
That's right.
So 4 would be Spider-Man. 3 would be Star Wars Return of the Jedi.
Oh, good one.
Just because of how the story concludes with the original trilogy. And it was one I do remember my dad and I always watching. He wasn't like one to always watch Star Wars with me, but it was usually Return of the Jedi he would watch with me. And stuff like that. 2 would be Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
And number 1 would be Aladdin.
Wow, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Aladdin's a great one.
Yeah. Always go back and watch Aladdin. Robin Williams Genie is probably my favorite character in any Disney project. But it always varies in the top 5. It's like one week it could be like, Prince of Egypt is my number 1 favorite animated movie or something like that. Prince of Egypt is very underrated though. If you haven't seen it, definitely go and watch it.
Absolutely.
It was back when DreamWorks were pretty imaginative with their stuff. As long as Robin walks around with a magnifying glass, a Woody doll with Andy's name written on it on the foot. um,
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I'm doing it, I'm going all out, I guess.
well, you could either be the Chicken Man from Toy Story, or you could be Nedry from Jurassic Park.
Is there a crossover somewhere?
No, Nedry
Could
is
it be in the chicken suit with the Hawaiian shirt?
You could, but Nedry is also Al from Al's Toy Barn. He's Newman.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a crossover in there somewhere.
I mean, there could be. I mean, there is a T-Rex toy in Toy Story.
I could be carrying around Rex. Chuck, you son of a bitch.
Curious now, though. Have you and or Robin seen the movie The Last Unicorn? It's literally my first memory for a movie. Funniest thing is I seen it in a dentist's office. I have not seen The Last Unicorn, unless The Last Unicorn is sitting across from me.
Really? Oh, I see how it is. Oh, who put you up to this one? Renee?
No, my own brain did.
Oh, that was really good. In the dentist's office. Interesting.
Shout out to Wayne Knight. Yes, Wayne Knight is very underappreciated.
See that Renee comment? Of course she does.
I love The Last Unicorn. It's very odd, but it's an amazing movie.
I knew Renee would know it.
Barbasol can is the only prop needed. Yeah, it is, but we can add more to it.
So I'd have to walk around with a Barbasol can with the pink tape wrapped around it because it's a prop all day?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But what are your goals for 2024 with Brick City Blockade, with life, with your penis? I mean,
great question, by the way. Goals in 2024. Well, number one is to have a fantastic wedding. Happy wife, happy life, right? You said it before. Very key. I want to have a fantastic wedding. I know it's going to be a special day no matter what. And I'm really excited about it. I've told you, like, this is the year of the podcast. This is the year that, we're going to be at any convention we can be at. This is going to be the year where we're going to host things. We're going to have more podcast episodes out for folks to listen to. Kind of the tease of these last 24 hours in terms of our social media presence. That's what you're going to see more of, like videos and breaking news alerts and things like that. I really want to accomplish more on that end. And also, one of the things I really want to make sure that I walk out of 2024, look back and say, yep, this was a really great year, is I really want to turn and focus back onto some of the things that we had years ago.
What do you mean?
So for me, that would be the reestablishment of yourself, Sean, me, Shaylin, Renee, finding time to hang out with each other more. Finding those moments to get back together with people on a more regular basis that we just haven't had the time to do. Finding times in our schedules to say, yeah, you know what, even if we come down and get Chili's lunch with y'all and just spend time. Like I want to get back to it because, 2025, I know for myself, it's going to be it's going to be family time. It's going to be time to jumpstart my family. It's going to be time to take those next steps and reestablishing friendships. Not saying that our friendship ever changed, but
I was about to say, wait, what happened to our friendship?
Reestablishing how we used to hang out all the time and have that family is really important. It's Olive Garden. When you're here, your family, right? It's that
I don't
same.
like Gus hear you say that. He hates Olive
I
Garden.
know.
Because he's Italian. He makes his own Italian food. He's like, no Olive Garden.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to try Gus's cutlets then, if that's the case.
That sounds sexual.
That's absolutely sexual.
Okay.
No, it's not sexual.
But have you seen the breadsticks that have the Alfredo sauce in it now?
Yeah. I mean, it's key.
Well,
yeah, we need to go to convention together. Yeah.
Yes. I'll actually talk to you about that after we're done with the podcast.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome.
Your friendship went sailing to look for the One Piece. That's an anime reference. I haven't watched One Piece.
Gotcha.
Yes, Gus, you did hear Olive Garden.
Gus, listen. All right. Answer this for me here, Gus. Okay. Do you have sauce on the stove every Sunday? Do you have sauce? No. Dancing around my question here, Gus. Do you have sauce? Sorry, not sauce. Do you have the gravy on the stove every Sunday? Is the question.
Yeah, he's trying to shame you like Game of Thrones.
You know.
But is he gonna parade you through the streets naked though?
Who's this?
Gus. Have you seen?
Oh, that's true. No,
I was about to say, have you seen Game of Thrones?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Family is made up of friends because I don't have any family. Well, you're welcome to join the family here.
You are more than welcome, caveman. Join us. You got a family here.
One of us.
I
don't make gravy. I don't make gravy. I make sauce.
Okay, it's a regional thing. I'm sorry.
I think he might be from New York. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, then Gus and I have some stuff to talk about. Gus, where are you from? Georgia? What?
Olive Garden sucks, but Massachusetts Olive Garden is good.
Because you can't get into the north end of Boston to get good Italian food because you can't park.
Well, nobody.
You got to go to Olive Garden, or you got to go to Bertucci's.
Park in Boston anyway. Trying to find parking in Boston for the Motionless in White concert was a whole other fucking task.
Oh,
and then, did I tell you the story about the sports bar Dave and I ate at before the concert?
No, you didn't tell me that.
So we were just having dinner before the concert. I was faced towards like the window because Dave wanted to watch the football game. This lady was on something. She was having a full-blown conversation with herself. She was licking the window. She was kissing it. She was outside, by the way. She has like 2 bottles of beer in her hand. She walks away, and probably 20 minutes later, I just go, she's coming back, and Dave just starts dying laughing. She comes back, talking to herself in the window, licking the window, kissing it, and then she leaves, and we don't see her again.
Huh.
So either she was a...
You were with Dave?
Yes.
It was
Dave and I going to the concert.
Okay, what was Dave's thoughts on this?
He didn't witness it. I did.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, because Dave would your brother, Dave, look what's going on. He'd be like, I'm trying to watch the fucking football game.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hear the best pizza comes from Boston.
Nope. Caveman, nope. Best a pizza is from, maybe she's trying to pick up Dave. Gus
maybe. Dave was single at the time. But at the time, Dave would thirst over the mannequins at the mall. It was getting pretty bad. But to be fair, some of the mannequins, the way they're dressing them is like,
The best pizza is in New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay.
Just gonna say that. You got to go to Frank Pepe's Pizza on Worcester Street. Gus, I'm gonna. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna take a step back here. I have not had pizza in Naples yet. Okay, so I take your word for it.
Sorry, Andrew, I let one of my clients loose in Boston. Well, why'd you do that?
Oh, Tony Meatloaf, what are you doing? You can't let one of your clients loose.
But other than that, thank you for joining the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, not me looking at him. It's Dave.
Dave's got a thing with Target mannequins, right?
It's not the Target ones. It's the ones at the mall in front of like Victoria's Secret.
Oh, Dave, come on, man.
But thank you for joining the podcast
Absolutely.
and being my first guest back. And I'm excited for where Brick City Blockade is going. Well, look, sometimes when you're walking by them, they have their cleavage showing. It's very, I don't know. Anyway, be on the lookout for more from Brick City Blockade. Do you have the date when we're coming back yet?
Yeah, so the official date coming back will be the first weekend in February. So we're talking February 8th, 9th.
It's still got curves.
What, you have the real Renee.
Because Dave was looking and I was trying to get him to get away from it.
Once one set of balls starts looking, that's it.
What?
Eyeballs, Andrew. Eyeballs. We're back on February 8th and 9th. That's when we're back.
8th and 9th.
Yep. So we're part of the Star Wars Podcast Day, which is on February 7th. So that's like a national celebration of Star Wars podcasts. It's celebrating 20 years of Star Wars podcasts. So the Brick City Blockade is an official part of that event, which is really cool. So that will be announced actually tomorrow on social media that we're joining in that. So on February 7th, we'll do like live streams. We'll do all kinds of things. So officially February 7th, but the 8th and the 9th, we're going to record. Robin says balls.
And Caveman says craziest mannequins are the pregnant ones. They all have pregnancy brain. I don't got pregnancy brain. Maybe Robin does, not so much me.
Maybe I do.
Renee, you are my kind of people.
Look at this. Look at this. Renee, Andrew had me on the show. And now you're in the chat. And what are we doing here? I don't want any kids. Well, then guess what? You and Andrew get to be Auntie Renee and Uncle Andrew.
Good. We can hype up the kids on sugar. And
there you go. See?
But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun getting back together with Brick City Blockade. There's going to be more watch along streams, like I mentioned in my video. I'm going to do the Indiana Jones series at some point this year, which is going to be fun. I still haven't seen the 5th one, so I might save that as a first time watch for the watch along stream. Attack the Clones, I'm probably doing next month for my Star Wars series watch along.
Oh, no.
Oh, Dave, that was supposed to be a secret. But at least we know Dave likes to get pegged.
Oh, look at Renee. Oh, you might want to end this thing. It's getting heated.
But anyway, thank you all for joining. And we will see you on Brick City Blockade's channel. Be sure to go and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Brick City Blockade. Oh.
I told you.
Oh. Anyway, we will see you February 8th and 9th?
7th, 8th, and 9th, you can
7th,
say.
8th, and 9th. Okay. Should be able to make at least 2 of those. And we will see you later.
See you, everybody.